Hey, my name is Francis Conrad, and I help people to live the life that they love. And hopefully, this video today is going to move us all closer to the life that we love simply by taking a familiar term. It's been part of my business and part of my life for years now. And if anything, this may be the cornerstone, the solid piece that all of my business and my thinking has been based on. And that's years and years of researching and looking at this idea of transformation, not just change, but transformation. And we'll get to that in a minute. But what happened to me actually this morning, what happened to me is I began to think about and look at transformation as if I've had it upside down. And I'm beginning to suspect that if I had it backwards or upside down, that's probably been the case for a lot of people. And as useful as this concept, this process of transformation has been, I have a feeling it can now be totally changed in a way that transformation for me won't look the same again. So I'm looking forward to sharing this. I have no idea how it wants to come out, but it definitely wants to be explored. And you get to be the first ones, along with myself, to hear what is it that we're exploring today. How is transformation going to come out in a way that it seems different? I want to start with the story, my story, of being a solid D student when I was in grade school. What does that mean? Well, it meant that every report card I got usually a couple of F's, and I might have had, like in art and maybe doing math or something, maybe got a C. But most of my grades were solid D's. And so you could say that I was identified, and it was reconfirmed not only through grade school, but into high school, that I was a D student. Not only was I a D student, but I found that I worked. I worked hard and struggled to get my D. So boy, that really reinforced how much I believed that if I got a D, I was performing probably in my mind what was my best. So this took me into high school and graduate school. And while other students in my class were studying a lot less hard than I was to get their A's and B's, I was really struggling because not only did I have to cover all the information that was appropriate to high school and college, but I was going back and I needed to catch up with all the things that as a D student I didn't really understand from grade school. So you can imagine I was working all of what I needed from grade school and at the same time studying what I needed for high school and college. It definitely meant that I was doing a lot of work, more work than other people. And if I was lucky, I was seeing myself get more and more C's and B's, not without a lot of extra work. So that's the way I go into my life. As I was growing older, was feeling like I've got to work twice as hard just to catch up and just to be able to function at a level, not at the top, but at a level that's somewhere closer to the average, closer to me, average is C student, and not getting as many F's and maybe not getting any F's anymore thanks to my hard work. So now I go on, in my story, I go on to graduate school, and all of a sudden something was not the same. For one thing, I prepared myself by really studying better methods and habits for, doing my homework and studying to to keep up with the class. I had changed something in how I took notes in the classroom. And then maybe the biggest thing that happened was that I changed the type of people I hung out with. All of a sudden, I became a part of a regular group of students who were all solid B and A students. And with all of these things, different ways to study, different ways to take notes, and myself being part of this other group, something was radically changed. You could say I was transformed. I went from being a solid C student to being a solid A student. And I was getting all A's. I wasn't working as hard as I did in the past. But something in me felt like, yeah, this is who I am now. So you could say that I became a student because I transformed my life. I transformed my identity. I transformed everything about school and how I worked and the people I hung out with. And I was no longer that C and D student that I had identified when I was younger. I was an A student, and it felt right to me. It felt like this is who I was. So you could say that, there was something that changed, and it wasn't just a small change, it changed everything. Gregory Bateson, who's a very remarkable thinker and philosopher that I've looked at a lot, he had a simple saying, and it really represented what I'm talking about when I talk about transformation. He said that I don't want to just make a difference or have a difference in my life. I want to have a difference that really makes a difference. So I could change some things, rearrange some things, but it only becomes significant when it has such a transformational ability to make a difference that lasts. So I studied hard and worked hard as a C student. And as much as I worked and studied, I was still a C student. When I was going to the university, I was no longer a C student. That was a difference that made a difference. I was working less hard. Things were different in terms of everything, in terms of who I hung out with, how I took notes. And as a result of that difference, I became an A student. That was a difference that made the difference. And it never left. There's something about transformation that not only does my identity, my sense of who I am, not only does that change, but it lasts and it becomes a sense that is anchored in who I am. It's anchored in my identity. It's anchored in my true self. So the difference that makes the difference is the difference that transforms me from one type of being into literally a different type of being. And that's what happened to me when I became an A student. Now let's look at that familiar metaphor that so many of us use for transformation. We've got the metaphor of the caterpillar going into being surrounded in the cocoon. And in the cocoon, what happens is the caterpillar, we say, is transformed into the butterfly. And what comes out is no longer a caterpillar. What comes out is a butterfly. You could say that Francis, me, the D and C student in grade school, high school, grade school, high school, and lower levels of school, that caterpillar went into the school system as a university student and came out a butterfly, was getting A's instead of D's and C's. So I was transformed. Who I was no longer the same. What if we have that backwards? What if that's the very core of our distortion, because we're identified as a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. What if I never really was a caterpillar? What if I always was the butterfly? So then what happened in the cocoon is that the caterpillar part of me goes into the cocoon, and it doesn't become a butterfly because it's always been the butterfly. There is no need for the butterfly to emerge, because who the butterfly is has already been a part of this being, this reality. What needs to happen in the cocoon is not for the butterfly to come together. What has to happen is for the caterpillar to dissolve, for the caterpillar to be gone, for the caterpillar to fall away. I like that one. It needs to fall away. It needs to dissolve. Why? Because in that caterpillar, the butterfly already exists. In that D and C student, the A student in me always existed. But what held me in place, keeping me as a D and C student, holding me into the reality of the caterpillar, that's what had to dissolve. So now we're looking at transformation differently. Transformation is identifying, beginning to understand who I truly am underneath the disguise, underneath the distortions, thinking that I'm a caterpillar. I never was a caterpillar. It's just that those were distortions of my butterflyness. It was a distortion that I was a C and D student. I always had the potential to be an A student. And what kept me in the other identity, it wasn't true. It wasn't who I was. So once that became evident, it just fell away. So instead of looking at what wants to emerge, that already is. It doesn't need to be focused on in the same way that in the cocoon, the focus is, what is it that needs to fall away? What is it that doesn't belong here? What is it that is not part of my own butterflyness? That's where the focus is. So now I want to end up looking at the cocoon again. What if the cocoon is the home? It's where my butterfly, where my true self, where my authentic self lives. And in this home, there's no room for distortion. There's no room for something that's a misunderstanding, something that does not define truth of who I am. What if in this home that stuff falls away? So when I transform, I move into an environment where what's not true can fall away. I move on a journey that takes me away from what it is that distorts my reality. I move from being a butterfly that's distorted and not understood because I'm distorting the truth. But the truth, and the only truth, is I'm a butterfly. And any distortion of being a butterfly does not belong in my home. And my home is the cocoon where I move in and I can clearly see that's not me. That doesn't fit. That's not accurate to who I am. And in seeing that, I'm able to allow it to fall away. Who is seeing it? What is it that identifies that that's not me? That's that connection we all have to our true self. It's the connection that knows what's authentic. And how do I know? Because it feels right. I can feel it when I'm being myself, when I'm being true. When I became an A student, I knew that that was who I was because it felt right, because I could feel like, wow, I'm more connected to who I truly am. And guess what? All those years of struggling as a D and C student, that wasn't me, that wasn't true. So in that school environment of the university, I was in my authentic A student's cocoon, and anything that didn't fit that, it went away. So what I'd like to say is that in looking at transformation, maybe the first step, the beginning of a journey of transformation, has more to do with putting ourselves in a place where we can question the authenticity of the way that we see ourselves. So many times in my past history, besides being a D and C student, but I really wasn't. Now we know that was a distortion. But I also had a distortion that says, I'm a victim. I'm not good enough to do things. And from that distortion, I also created a different type of a caterpillar that was slugging along and that was working super hard at trying to improve myself. I didn't need to be improved. The truth of who I am, my authentic self, already exists. I needed to come to a place, a cocoon that belonged to my authentic self, for me to see being a victim is not who I am. And how do I know that? It didn't feel right. And as I begin to come out of that feeling that I'm a victim, it feels more authentic for me to see myself as having powers, as having a purpose, as having a life that's bigger than that. So I'm going to end with coming back to this metaphor. I'm not wanting to beat a dead horse, but it's exciting to me to think that it's not about the caterpillar coming in so that it can emerge from the cocoon as a butterfly. It's about the butterfly being in its home space so that anything that distorts and distracts us or takes us away from or limits us from being our true self, that those things can emerge and in the sight of our true self can dissolve because they're not who we are. And how do we know this process is right for us? It's because it feels right. And so we allow ourselves to follow any journey that dissolves something that's not true about us and feels that what's emerging is just right. That's as much as I can say about it today. I'm sure I'll come back to this in other videos. But the primary message of this video is that you don't need to become a butterfly. You don't need to be more. You don't need to create a reality that is a advancement that takes us up to a better level. That reality already exists. We just need to step into the home where that reality exists and let us see what it is that needs to fall away. And when it falls away, we'll know it's right because of the feeling that, oh, this is me. This feels like I'm finally home. It feels like who I am authentically is at the surface. Well, it's been there all along. That's the message. So thank you for listening and giving me this opportunity, which I really appreciate because it gives not only you, but gives me a chance to explore what's trying to bring itself to the surface in my own exploration. And I sort of feel that what we're talking about today is going to make a huge difference because it straightens something out that has had the emphasis on the caterpillar and not on a butterfly that has always existed. It's been there all the way from birth through death. The butterfly, the part of us that's authentic and real, it doesn't need to be formed because it already is. It's who we are. Anyways, thank you. And definitely put comments below if you like this and find that it's just like for me, something that's valuable. Definitely put comments. And I'm looking to, take these types of explorations and expand on them and find ways that, we can come closer to the truth of who we are. So thank you so much.